topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Florida. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Our great producer, Juan, reminded me, and I want to tell people to keep in your prayers. We had down here in Southeast Florida, we had in Palm Beach County, 2 motorcycle officers killed in an automobile accident this morning. A third one is in critical condition, and we just ask that you keep that officer in prayers. One of the things I love about this show is when I can bring a topic that people just either don't know exists, they don't know how it works, and then to bring on one of the top, and we're talking today about public insurance adjusters, one of the top public insurance adjusters in Florida. A very busy man. We've had some really hellacious weather here. In fact, Saturday, there's talking about a freeze here. So we might have some busted pipes. Let me introduce you to the great Ellie Haft. Good afternoon, Ellie.
Well, you're the great one, Mr. Sanger. I'm humbly just here as your guest. You're the host.
I love you, bro. You know, I got to tell you what you do. I am so in awe of, because I had damage to my house about 15 years ago in Texas. And I'm going to tell you something. If I hadn't gotten a public adjuster because of a friend of mine telling me, I would have lost $70,000, Ellie. $70,000. That was the difference between trying to do it myself. And what I love about what you do is you know just as much as the insurance companies do. So let's start off. Tell people about yourself and your company.
Well, yeah, and sometimes actually it's funny. Sometimes we actually have to know the policies better than the insurance companies themselves to beat them at their own game. But yeah, you hit it on the head, and with your own personal experience, you can attest to the fact that, you know, the insurance company's business model is delay, deny, defend. They want to collect your premiums every month, and then actually a lot of people don't realize with your premium dollars, you think it might be going into a piggy bank for, you know, a rainy day, if God forbid there's a fire or a hurricane or a pipe that bursts, God forbid. That's not how it works. They take those billions of dollars that they collect weekly in hyper secure mutual funds or bonds. And, you know, think about it, Steve, even if they're making a fraction of a point on those billions of dollars, think about how much money that accrues in interest over time.
Yes.
So that justifies why they do what they do. I mean, I think it's still nefarious, but from a business standpoint, they're not there to simply indemnify you. They're there to make money off of your premium, and that's how they do it. So when it comes time, if God forbid an emergency happens, you do file a claim, those premium dollars, the insurance company is not so ready and willing to just fork it back over to you. That's not how it works. They want to minimize their payments, and then they want to hold on to as much, even if they know, okay, ultimately, yeah, we're going to have to pay out on this one. The longer they can hold on to the majority of that settlement amount, they're still making interest on those dollars, right? So,
Right.
so that's kind of the reason for why they operate the way they do. And just conceptually, it helps some of the clients to understand big picture holistically why it's not like the insurance company is singling Mr. or Mrs. homeowner out. They do that to everyone pretty much. And if you're not represented, even more so, because then you're exposed. It's like going to court without an attorney. You may do so, but at your own peril, right? So it's the same thing when you're filing a claim and you're going up against an insurance carrier. Unless you write, rebuild estimates in construction for a living, how would you know if what the insurance company is offering you is fair market value? Right. So just like anything else in life, if God forbid you break your leg or you have an abscessed tooth, you go to a doctor or you go to a dentist. You leave it to the expert in that field, right? You're not going to perform surgery on yourself, or at least I hope not. So it's the same thing when your house gets injured or your house gets sick. You put it in the hands of a capable expert. The way that I work, I can't speak for all public adjusters, but typically the way we work is on a contingency basis. So, we're basically like a pro bono attorney and an accountant, a hybrid of the two. We do an accounting of all the claim-related expenses, and then we write a worst-case scenario estimate to make sure there's no meat left on the bone, so to speak, to fully indemnify you, knowing that it's going to be a negotiation with the carrier. 99 times out of 100, unless it's a total loss and the house or the building burns down to the ground, they're not going to give me 100% of my estimate. We know that. So we enter into the negotiation high, but justifiably high, as long as I can justify my line items. And then the opposite end of that spectrum is obviously the insurance company comes in low, and then it's my job to settle that dispute. So, and a lot of times people say, well, why don't I just go straight to an attorney? And, honestly, that's when it's at that dispute, right? It's a contract, it's a construction dispute about an estimate. You don't need a law degree to resolve a dispute about a construction estimate. You leave that to a public adjuster, an appraiser, a contractor, a general contractor, someone who reads and writes estimates and negotiates settlements all day long. So on top of that, my fee is 10% in an emergency, the first year after an emergency, such as a hurricane. It's 20% for non-emergency, such as a plumbing claim. The attorneys now are charging, 40% of the indemnity amount. And as you know, if you've ever had to go through the painstaking process of litigation, it takes forever. It's dragged out. There's certain procedural benchmarks in terms of the timeline of what has to occur. You have to provide the insurance company with a notice of intent to litigate before you can file a lawsuit. And then the insurance company has 60 days to respond to that notice of intent. And if it doesn't get resolved within that 60 days, which it rarely does, then you file the lawsuit. Then they oftentimes file a motion for summary judgment. I don't want to get into all the legalese, but it takes a much longer time typically than if I were to try to settle it directly with the desk adjuster at the desk level. And then if I and the desk adjuster can't come to an agreement, there's what's called ADR, which stands for Alternative Dispute Resolution, which, depending on the terms and provisions within your specific policy, it typically will have arbitration, mediation, and appraisal. So, those are ways in lieu of litigation to settle it without having to go to court and without having to be deposed and sit for hours by the insurance company's, opposing counsel. And it's not a fun process. And like I said, it's kind of overkill. So, I do a really good job, and I take a lot of pride in what I do. And if God forbid I don't get my client any money, which never really happens, then they don't owe me a penny. They don't owe me any money. I only get 10% or 20% of money that is rendered that I recover on their behalf, and that's after the deductible comes out of the first check or series of checks. So I know that was a little bit of a long-winded explanation.
No, that's fine. It's fine.
Of what it is that I do, but I want your listeners to understand.
How long does it normally take I know each case is different, but how long does it normally take to get a case settled?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. I wish there was a cookie cutter answer to that. Each claim is different, but technically there's a not a hard and fast law, but it's not written in stone, but there's a 90-day, at least in the state of Florida, there's a 90-day coverage determination window from the date of the insurance inspection. So once the insurance adjuster comes out and inspects the damage, they write their report, their estimate, and then they submit that to the desk adjuster. And the desk adjuster has, 90 days from the date of that inspection. Typically, they have some ways to extend that. They can request a reinspection. They can send out an RFI, which is a request for information. And until they get the responses to that RFI, they're not required to provide a coverage determination. But typically, it's that 90-day window where we won't even know where we're holding in terms of whether it's a full denial, whether it's a partial denial, whether they send an under-deductible letter where they're opening up coverage in that case, right? But they're saying that the value of the loss is under your deductible. And then, I can come in and write an estimate that's much higher and try to resolve the dispute. Or they just open up coverage and send a small check. Typically, they don't, willingly fork over a lot of money right at first. But that first step, whether it's under deductible or they issue a small undisputed check, that's a very critical first step because, like I said, they're opening up liability, and then it just becomes settling the disputed amount between my estimate and theirs. If they deny upfront, if it's a full denial, the only way to resuscitate that would be to then, if I'm already on the file, is to involve an attorney. We have to file suit, and then we can get them to overturn the denial. So that's typically kind of the initial time frame. And then once, they respond with their coverage determination, it all depends if, the adjuster is willing to play ball, if I have a previous relationship with them, if it's a strong cause of loss, such as a hurricane versus, a pipe that burst 3 years ago, they're obviously going to scrutinize that loss more than something that's more recent and verifiable, let's say. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it. It's kind of like a chess game, which for me, personally, I always enjoyed chess as a kid growing up. My grandfather taught me the game, and I kind of inform my clients as to the extent that they want to be informed. Some people are just hands off and they're like, Ellie, let me know when you get the check. Some people want to be handheld the whole way. And I kind of feel my clients out, but I inform them of their different options and their different possible moves on the chessboard and the different strategies. So we try to remain 5 to 10 steps ahead of the chessboard at all times. And then when it comes time to make a decision, my clients are well informed and they know what their options are. And we've already strategized and make those moves swiftly and accordingly.
But now it's not, we talk about hurricanes. There is so much more that you do besides just hurricanes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's any covered peril, Steve, within the terms of the insurance policy. So it could be theft, vandalism, burglary, fire, God forbid, lightning, hailstorm, obviously hurricane, as you mentioned, anything that's listed within the policy. There are even certain times where, let's say you purchase a policy and the insurance agent doesn't properly educate you on what you're buying at the time. There's what's called errors and omissions, where you can actually seek restitution or reimbursement under the insurance agent's commercial insurance policy. So if they kind of sell you something that's smoke and mirrors and you don't know what you're getting and you can prove that, that would be more kind of like a lawsuit, or you would file a claim under their commercial lines of insurance. So there's a lot of different possible perils that you're protected against. But let's be honest, how many times do homeowners or business owners or boat owners read through the exact terms and provisions of that long 100-page or more policy at the time that they purchase it? So they're kind of like, okay, I have insurance. I'm going to put it in my drawer and let it accumulate dust and hope I never need it. And then kind of when it's too late, right? Once you have a hot water heater that bursts, or you have a pipe that explodes, or, a tree falls on your house, then the people come and, open up the policy and they say, well, wait, what is this? Why do I have an $80,000 deductible? What is that? This is like a fire policy. When am I ever going to use this? So a lot of times it's very critical. I want to educate your listeners. It's really, really important to grill your agent or whoever it is you're purchasing your policy from, and make sure that they properly edify you and educate you on what it is that you're purchasing. Because just like when you purchase a car, you want to know what kind of gas mileage it gets, and if you're leasing it, how many miles you get per year, and obviously how much you're paying per month. But it's like, what am I getting in exchange for that? So oftentimes it's one of those things where too little, too late. Oh, I didn't know that I wasn't covered for this. Well, that comes back to the time that you purchased the policy, and I can only fight for your rights within the constraints of Florida law and the terms and conditions of your insurance policy.
I want people to know also that if they have relatives in the Texas area, you also cover Texas as well. And didn't you go to North Carolina a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, Steve, I have missed a few shows, to no discredit to you. It's just been one plane ride and one long
But were
trip.
you surprised about how many people that didn't have the homeowners insurance?
Well, so since we spoke, yes, I am licensed in Florida and Texas, and then since we engaged with our contract for both Florida and Texas, I've also become licensed in North Carolina and New Jersey. In fact, there's 37 states that recognize my Florida license, where I don't have to take the state exam. So technically, there's 37 states that I could represent homeowners, business owners, boat owners. Now, as far as the homeowners in North Carolina, what was surprising to me was there was 98% of those policies do not have flood insurance coverage.
Wow.
Because it's not required by the banks who underwrite the policies for whatever reason, and those people that lived in the mountains there in Western North Carolina and outside of Asheville, a lot of their homes, businesses, and even in some unfortunate circumstances, their own family members were washed away. And it was kind of like mudslides, you know what I mean? So they weren't expecting to have that type of damage there, and neither were the underwriters, obviously. But you hit the nail on the head. I can only help with the terms and conditions, like I mentioned, within the policy. I flew out there for a large commercial claim. It's a $14.7 million property that they purchased 7 years ago. And my estimate came to $9 million. Wow. 3 large commercial buildings just outside of Asheville. So that wasn't really, they also didn't have flood, but there was roof damage and wind-driven rain that penetrated through that storm-caused opening. In the southern building, there was 2 trees that fell on the corner. 2 of their trucks got flooded out and totaled. So that was covered. And now, obviously, we're waiting for the insurance company to make their determination. But we're sitting with our estimate and waiting for them to make their coverage determination and then submit that $9 million estimate. And if I can't resolve it, luckily that policy has a one-way appraisal invocation where I can invoke appraisal, and then basically they resolve the dispute. Like I said, it's a form of ADR, and we can resolve that. It's settled within 3 to 4 months, and they'll have a check in hand, and usually it's a considerable settlement amount.
Wow. And now you also handle businesses too.
Yeah, this is a business. The one in North Carolina is a commercial claim. The one in New Jersey is actually the same client, just two different properties that they own. The commercial, I just signed one in St. Petersburg, a nursing home that has 34 patient rooms and had also 2 or 3 trees that fell on it, and it's got water damage in 95% of the facility and mold. And the building was built in 1962, so odds are we're going to get it tested, but 99% it's going to have asbestos. So with asbestos, all the patients are going to have to vacate. And then with that, there's business interruption. So with business interruption on commercial claims, we do an accounting of what their average book of business is for, let's say, the last 6 months or the last 12 months. And then if all the patients in this case have to move out, the business interruption, they get reimbursed for as if they were open. So they don't have to lay off all their employees, and they can actually, there's a moving tenant endorsement within the policy, so they can relocate their patients, and the actual facility itself can relocate until their own facility gets restored to the pre-loss condition. And that actually, let's say this specific nursing home, they do about $600,000 per month. So in 2 months of business interruption, that's $1.2 million. So it's a substantial amount that's added to the claim if for some reason they do have to close down and can't operate. It's a very important coverage that business owners should make sure they have in there.
Well, I got to tell you, this show could easily be an hour long. It goes by so fast. Let's tell people how they can reach you.
Well, in Florida, my Florida office number is 305-447-8822. My website is infinitypublicadjusting.com. Thank you, Steve, and your show host, Juan, for prominently displaying that at the bottom of the screen. Great job, guys. And you can also email me directly. My email address is just the first letter of my first name, which is E for Ellie, and then my last name, which is H-A, F as in Frank, T as in Tom. So it's ehaft@infinitypublicadjusting.com. So you can schedule your free consultation directly online at infinitypublicadjusting.com by emailing me at that email address, ehaft@infinitypublicadjusting.com, or by calling that number 305-447-8822. All I will need is your insurance policy and the details of your claim. I go over, whether or not it's going to be worth your while. If it seems like the damage would be over your deductible, I go over your options. And then we can get you signed up either via DocuSign, or I can come and visit in person to do a damage assessment as well at no cost to the homeowner. So the whole representation process is no out-of-pocket expense. The only time I get paid is when I get my client money. If I don't get them money, they don't owe me any money. So it's one of those situations where nothing to lose, everything to gain. Kind of like coming on this show with you, Steve. It's great reaching your audience.
I just wish you cared more about your business and you could be more excited. I love having you on the show. Good Shabbos tomorrow. And Ellie will be back in our Texas show. We're going to do a replay this time, but he'll be doing 3 shows next month. So, Ellie, thanks so much. We'll see you soon, bro.
Thank you, brother. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom to you. And we'll be back in a minute.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.